Do you ever ask yourself, how would my life be different if I had made different choices? Would I be happier? More wealthy? Here's a humorous novel that explores that question, venturing back to that magical time in the early 90s when grunge was taking over big hairbands. It was just when our hero, Amy Gare, began to face the real world. You Hawkeye fans just might enjoy the setting as well. Goodbye Def Leppard, I'll Miss Those Jeans by Steph Kramer can be found on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's free for Kindle Unlimited subscribers. Casmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Casmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Casmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at Casmium.com. Casmium, where sports technology sparks victory.
Good evening, Hawkeye fans. Apologize for the slight delay there. Had some technical difficulties with our Wi-Fi here at home, but glad to be joining you on this victorious but interesting Saturday night after Iowa defeats Troy 38-21 in Kinnick Stadium this afternoon. Iowa postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Coach Don Patterson coming up here. What turned out to be a very interesting game. Again, just like Illinois State, maybe more so this week, a tale of two halves. I can't express the frustration that people were feeling on Twitter, Instagram, all the social medias at halftime of this game. Iowa was down 14-10, had given up a just completely uncharacteristic punt return, a long bomb touchdown given up by TJ Hall, and another offensive output that looked subpar. 10 points against Troy is nothing to be particularly proud of, but the Hawkeyes did manage to get it going in the second half. They did score 28 points in the second half, won the second half 28-7 to pull away from Troy 38-21. We'll get to a couple takeaways from the game as we are late. I do want to add in very quickly the legend himself, Coach Don Patterson. How are we doing tonight, Coach?
Kyle, we're doing okay.
Yeah.
Could be better, but could be a lot worse.
I agree. I think there were some fears at halftime that it was going to be a lot worse than it turned out to be. You were in Kinnick Stadium today. I'm assuming would have heard some of the boos and some of the frustration at halftime, and then saw how the Hawkeyes were able to flip the script in the second half. What did you see? What did you feel in Kinnick Stadium this afternoon as Iowa took on Troy?
Well, when there was 1 minute left in the first half, I was anxious to see what we were going to do with that last 60 seconds because I knew it might go either way. And sure enough, we decided to not take any chances at all and end the half as quickly as we could by running a couple of run plays. And I understand the fans were upset. What it told me, though, Kurt knew we were down by 4. He wanted to be sure we didn't do anything stupid. And he was confident we could overcome a 1-score lead. Let's face it, if we did turn the ball over in that last minute, even if that's worst case scenario, even if they end up with a touchdown, we'd be down 11, but of course that's 2 scores, and we're not exactly an offensive juggernaut right now, so 2 scores sounds maybe twice as difficult to overcome as 1 score, I do believe. So it didn't shock me that we sat on the ball. What I would like to have seen would be for us to simply spread the defense out and run a really safe play, such as a draw play maybe, something that was ultra safe, and see what happened. Maybe we bust it for 30 yards, and I was quickly doing the math. We were on the 25, of course, after the ball went in the end zone of the kick. So 40 yards would have put us on their 35, which would have allowed us to kick a 53-yard field goal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't doubt that Matt would have been able to get the ball through there. So we were 40 yards away with 60 seconds. That's doable. Let's face it, if we force them to spread out and defend our formations, there are a lot of good teams to throw the ball, at least on a short and intermediate basis, and to move the ball down the field. Negatively, we only had 1 timeout left, and that brings up a good point. Coach Fry the defense was joking and say, we can't ever take a timeout because we'll get the wrath of Coach Fry if we do. But you know where Coach is coming from. He wants those 3 timeouts available at the end of the half in case we need them to generate a 2-minute drive and have the benefit of more than just 1 timeout. So we had 1 timeout only, and we hadn't exactly moved the ball up and down the field with any rapidity through the air. So let's face it, at that point, any run play that we call would have a chance to bust simply because we've had more explosive plays this year by run than by pass. So the only issue I have with it, if we're going to run the ball, let's at least present as if we're going to throw it and then run it, because I think that enhances our chances of getting a chunk play out of the running game.
Another note I had from that first half as well, Iowa got down to the 15-yard line when it was 0-0, had 3rd and short, failed to convert, had 4th and short, failed to convert. What do you think about that sequence, the play calling, and the decision to go for it on 4th down?
Well, I can't honestly remember what we did on 3rd. Was it actually 3rd and 1?
It was 3rd and 2 or 3, I think, and then there was
a yard or 2.
Yeah.
And we were, I think, pretty much a legitimate yard short, weren't we? It wasn't just inches.
Yeah, it wasn't inches. It was definitely a full yard.
Well, I don't know what the stat is right off the top of my head, but in the Big Ten, if you score the first points, you do win way more than 50% of the time. I don't know what it is, but probably at least 65%, I would think. And obviously, it doesn't give them a chance for momentum. And it wouldn't count as a red zone failure. I think we were on maybe the 18 at the time. So that officially what became a red zone failure to kick the ball through the uprights, of course, would give us the satisfaction of knowing we're on the board first. And we didn't come away dry. And of course, anytime you go on fourth down, there's a chance that the defense is going to win. Certainly a good offense wins a lot more than they lose. And that still remains to be seen with our offense. I was encouraged, Kyle, with the way it reminded me a little bit of the Illinois State game. I think over time we kind of wore them down a little bit. Not because it was a little bit warm and humid, because let's face it, they practice in Alabama, and I can promise you they have a lot of warm, humid days in August, September down there.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, we just wore them down. We were creasing them for good yardage, especially as the game went on. We ran okay in the first half. We ran even better in the second half. I hope that can continue for us. That'll be the question. Can we continue to get that done? The tougher tests are up ahead, of course, starting with Minnesota.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all right now it starts and ends with number 2. Caleb Johnson is once again. I sound like a broken record. He's our RTI Threads Player of the Game again. Last week he had 25 carries for $187 and then 2 touchdowns. And this week he's got 25 carries, 173 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He is up to 61 carries by my math. 61 carries, 479 yards, and 6 touchdowns on the season, which already passes up his 463 yards from last season and 117 carries. And he's almost halfway to 1,000 yards, over halfway to catching LaShawn Williams, who finished at 821 yards last year and was Iowa's leading rusher. So just another sterling game from Caleb Johnson, who just continues to separate himself. I thought another note, unfortunately, going forward was the injury to Kamari Moulton. Looked like he got a little bit banged up. And also LaShawn Williams, like I mentioned, he was our leading rusher last year. And another day today that he gets 4 touches for 9 yards. Would love to see him get a little bit more involved. I know he's probably battling that injury still that he suffered in camp, but would be great to see him get going as well. Obviously, the big takeaway, I think, besides Caleb Johnson in this game was, man, big plays, 2 huge plays over the top, specifically over TJ Hall, and of extremely uncharacteristic long punt return touchdown on special teams that I thought was, it was a low kick, but it was also probably, to be fair, it was also poorly covered.
Correct.
Talk about those plays, what you saw specifically from TJ Hall and that punt return, those 3 plays, and what you think has caused Iowa to be susceptible to those so far this season.
Well, one of the touchdowns over TJ was absolutely his fault. The other one, I'm not sure, Kyle. I'll tell you what, I need to look at the TV version to study what we were playing. I think we were playing half coverage on that second touchdown. And if it's half coverage, in theory, of course, you got 2 deep safeties and they're responsible for any deep ball. But I think it was a wheel route. I think that was an inside receiver down the boundary again, wasn't it? I think. Yeah. You saw the game on TV, right? So you had a chance to observe more than once. Yeah. So if it's 2-man, I doubt that it was 2-man because I'm pretty sure that TJ was lined up on the outside receiver, and the outside receiver ran a post route. So as he released down the field, I believe what happened, TJ cushioned off the line of scrimmage, probably was lined up no deeper than 5 yards. Maybe he leveled off at 10 yards or so. And I don't know how they're taught right now. Maybe if there's a wheel route coming, it's automatic that you latch onto the wheel route. I don't know that. Some people would teach it that way. Other people would not. So I'm not sure who's at fault. Only the coach knows for sure. I did look specifically at what happened when TJ got to the bench, and I didn't see any suggestion that he screwed up based on the interaction with Coach Ferris. And then I do recall this, correct me if I'm wrong, he was right back out there after that second touchdown.
He was, yeah, and that obviously is a marked difference from what happened to Xavier Wampa the previous week when he got burned. He was immediately pulled, so I would assume that's a message as to who the blame was on that play.
Yeah, that suggests that maybe that second one was not TJ's fault.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. It's guesswork on my part because I'm just sitting out in the crowd like everyone else. But that's at least how I saw it. Getting back to the punt return, I made the comment at the time to people around me. I said, he may be wearing number 9, but he's not Tory Taylor, not yet. And frankly, it'd be unfair to expect him to be Tory Taylor anytime soon. The ball didn't have a lot of hang. Incidentally, there were other times when he had 50-yard punts on the fly with good hang time.
Yeah.
I didn't time them, of course. I didn't have a stopwatch, but I know what good hang time looks like because I had a future NFL punter on my team at Western Illinois by the name of Mike Cyphers, one of the best punters in the NFL for a decade or more. For all those Charger fans that are out there, and not to mention, of course, as a young coach, I had the privilege of watching a guy named Reggie Roby punt. So I've seen 2 of the best punters in the history of college football. Those two are the best. And Torrey's certainly right up there with any and all of them. And maybe someday our freshman can be there. He's certainly got that potential. A little inconsistent right now. That particular ball didn't have great hang time. And as you mentioned, doesn't matter if the hang time's poor or not. That doesn't provide you with the opportunity of not being in good coverage. Let's face it, the coverage eliminates all caught long returns regardless of the hang time. And we simply didn't defend the field. They got outside of us, and it was a race down the boundary, and that was the end of that. So it's good that it happened in a way because it's a wake-up call for that coverage unit. Don't make any assumptions about the other team fair catching or the other team not having an opportunity to return because right now our freshman punter may not give us great hang time. If it doesn't, it's on us to defend regardless of how much time the return man has.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think as far as Reese Dakin's concerned, he certainly has had some punts over the first 3 games, in my opinion, that look Tory-esque, but like you said, the consistency is just not there. The remarkable thing about Tory was it felt like Tory never made a mistake in all the years that he punted for Iowa. It really, really felt like there wasn't, maybe every punt wasn't down inside the 5, but there were not punts where he put the coverage team in a bad position because of hang time or because of where he placed the ball or anything like that. And there certainly wasn't a regular pattern of kicking it into the back of the end zone, which there seems to be through the first 3 weeks this week. There's just not that touch developed yet, but I think he'll get there.
Let me take you back a week and a half ago. I was in practice in part because I got a call from an old friend of mine that happens to be a scout for the Bears and has been for 40 years. And by his request, I went to practice. He wanted to introduce me to a young scout. I used to be the pro liaison at Iowa many years ago, and I was the one always talking to the pro scouts. Anyway, I know for a fact, because this particular pro scout, who remained nameless, but a veteran scout, I know for a fact that the Bears are very, very pleased to have Tory Taylor. So I'm glad he's off to a good start with the Bears.
Absolutely. We do have a early guest joining us today. We'll get to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line in just a minute, but special guest, fresh off of the briefing room, Mr. Tom Gaker. How are we doing tonight?
Good. How are you guys?
I'm assuming that press conference was a little more tolerable than the last time.
It was the little the smiles, the frowns were turned upside down, Coach P. As you know, they it was an interesting game, but yes. I think maybe the story of this Iowa football team 3 games in is probably 1/2 rough, 1/2 good, but it's kind of flipped it in the Iowa State game where first half was good, second half not so good, obviously, but Illinois State game, first half rough, second half they go well. This one, first half rough, second half you score 28 points and pull away for, I think, a pretty comfortable win. So right. I think the thing that's eating at Kirk right now is the inconsistency, big plays on defense, special teams, uncharacteristic things that Iowa football is doing right now that are going to come back to bite you in the behind right. once the next 9 games are played. If you do that in Big Ten play, I don't care who you're playing, you're going to end up on the bad side. You can get by with those things against Illinois State and Troy. You can't give away points like that as we saw last week against Iowa State.
Yeah.
Yeah, one good aspect of the game, Tom, I'm sure, was at least it was a test of our resolve. At the end of the half,
Yeah.
Kirk decided just to go to the locker room with a 4-point deficit. The fans were not happy. So that in itself is a little bit of adversity for the team. And obviously, Kirk had great faith in our ability to win the second half. I'm sure he told them that at halftime. And our guys went out and they didn't go into panic mode. They just went right back to business and continued to wear down Troy. And it was good to see because the running game was better as the game played on.
And I know fans were not happy at halftime, but Kirk addressed it afterwards when we talked to him, and he was like, he just felt like something bad was probably going to happen. He just wanted to get to halftime, kind of regroup. Didn't feel like anything was going right for him. And instead of potentially making a bad mistake and trying to push the ball down the field and maybe give up more points, you
Right.
just get to halftime, you regroup, you're going to get the ball when you come out of halftime. So just get there, figure things out, and they did. And I thought they played well. Obviously Caleb Johnson is playing at an incredibly high level. Sean Green right now, I think, in terms of the way he's running the football and with the force, but also, that 33-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter. I mean, he wasn't touched. I mean, that's good blocking the offensive line. His quote when I asked him about the offensive line, and he said that they played their asses off.
Wow.
So he is really happy with his offensive line right now. And I think the big key for the offensive line is that they're healthy. Last year they were not healthy, and it showed up, and their performance was not great. This year, they're healthy, and I think they're playing pretty well.
I think, Tom, it's probably been quite a few years since we had this much experience in one offensive line.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of game experience, and I think our guys have been through the wars, and they have a good idea of how to react to any and all situations. And
here's an interesting fact that was passed along to us, that this is the first time since 2013 that they have rushed for, as a team, over 200 yards in 3 straight games. So It's been a while. That tells you that they're getting things done offensively that are really making an impact. And I know there's a lot of people that are out on Cade McNamara and just think he is playing terrible and everything else. I thought he played solid today. I think it was like 19 to 23. He didn't do any harm. Now you can say, yeah, he didn't make any plays, but I thought the Weechin pass was a big one. I think some of the Gill passes, the third down throw to Caleb Brown, I thought was a big play. He did make some solid plays. Yeah.
When I saw the numbers,
Jared Bowie down the sidelines too.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't reflect because obviously that's a nice high percentage. And a cynic might say, well, they must have been all dump-offs. That's not true. Now, there weren't a lot of up and overthrows, but there were a lot of intermediate passes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they weren't exactly on target, but we had a lot of nice catches too.
And one drop from Reese Vandersee had a drop that should have been caught. And he'll tell you that, I'm sure, 100%. So,
the ball was called thrown behind him a little bit, but he still should have caught it. You're right.
Yeah. He should have caught that one. And I thought he played solid. I liked the new look jumbo package that they're trying along the goal line with 4 tight ends in there, and they tried that last week, didn't work. But I think the difference is Caleb Johnson was not in the game when they were doing those plays.
Yeah.
They might want to exit the Hayden Large handoff play. That one almost didn't happen. It looked like they almost didn't get that handoff in there.
Yeah, I thought the first time I thought it was novel, but this time it didn't impress me as much as it did the first time.
And Sullivan in there, maybe that'll appease some people who have wanted to see him. He's at least getting out there. Maybe gives them a little more of a run threat, as you saw in that play where he could do the RPO and he took off. And then he was like, well, I could run it in, or I could get credit for a touchdown pass to Addison Ostringa and make him happy. So I'll do that instead.
Well, I bet you have an idea what an old quarterback coach might tell him. That's actually,
don't throw the ball.
That's
Don't
actually,
throw the ball.
actually a poor decision.
Yes.
What could happen? First off, they weren't far from being across the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
So it might have been a ball thrown beyond the line of scrimmage. That's one possibility. The other possibility, of course, is the ball simply goes off his fingertips, and all he had to do, of course, is what we used to have is a one-word declaration to your teammates. It was simply a call of go. That was it, and that would have told our tight end to simply try to find someone to block. But the safer thing to do is just to run the ball in.
Yeah. Because as we know, there's two of the three things that can happen when you throw a football are bad.
Yeah. On the other hand, he does have a pass efficiency of 446 right now.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. I think Kate finished it with like a QB efficiency of like 150 or something like that today.
I think maybe so 146, something like that.
Yeah, it was around that.
And I remember it's 300 points different.
Yes,
but only on one attempt for 1 yard.
One attempt for 1 yard, but overall, just I thought they responded well. They've got to clean up those big plays on defense. So that's just so Phil Parker defense like that. They just keep making those.
Now here's a positive. Here's a positive note. We did a better job of pressuring the quarterback today.
Yes, and I asked Kirk about that after the game and specifically mentioned to him Brian Allen, Max Llewellyn, and Ethan Herkett. And those three guys really stood out today as guys that got after the quarterback, made plays, and that was a question mark coming into the season was at defensive end, how much could they get from Max Llewellyn? How much can they get from Brian Allen?
Beautiful spin move on the late sack. Beautiful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think we've seen that those guys can play significant snaps. I think Pittman's been doing an okay job at tackle to give them a 3-man rotation there. So I think they're okay right now in the defensive line. I think their biggest question is, what are they going to do about the defensive backfield at this point? Because it's been inconsistent. And although Jamari Harris did get the pick six, and credit to Nick Jackson for wiping a guy out in the last 5 yards for taking it to the end zone.
Quarterback, wasn't it?
It was the quarterback.
He was the quarterback, yeah.
Man, I just know he wiped somebody out. I was like, whoa.
I used to always tell our defense, when you intercept a pass, first off, remember those 5 fat guys on offense, they can't tackle. Yeah. Quarterback can't tackle because he's a sissy. I'm talking about the opposing quarterback, of course. Not only needs 5 tacklers, so let's go block those 5 guys and score a touchdown. And I was happy for Jamari to get that done. We're going to score other touchdowns on defense. We know that. And I think it's a foregone conclusion. We're going to also score touchdowns in the kicking game, too. Incidentally, one thing that was good to see, same thing we've been saying, Widgeon, when the ball's under his arm, good things happen. Oh, yeah. So let's get the ball on offense, too. Doesn't have to be anything thrown way down the field. Just give him the ball in space and see if he can make a guy miss and see if he can get to the end zone quicker than they do.
I want to see a cornerback on somebody else's team try to keep up with him on a crossing route because I don't think many people can.
Go ahead.
I'd like to see him on a simple go route because I think they might be surprised with his speed. He does have good speed.
Yeah. So
he's not Tim DeWhite, but he thinks he is.
Yeah. So just with the defensive backfield, Tom. So 2 questions. Number 1, was there any comment specifically on TJ Hall? Obviously, the 2 big plays given up. Coach Ponit pointed out as he came on at the beginning here, he thinks the second one was questionable as to whether or not it was his fault. And also with Xavier Wampa as well. I mean, he played roughly half the game after giving up the big play last week. Was there anything regarding him?
Yeah, nothing really. Just in general that they've got to clean those things up. They've got to get better. One thing I did ask some people down on the sidelines who were down there, I said, how's Phil been reacting down there to those big plays? And they said, surprisingly calm, which is amazing to me. But I did ask I asked Jamari about halftime and what that was like. And he said Phil might have been a little animated, at
Yeah,
halftime. He might have been a little. Yeah, and I think you're right, Coach, about that second one. Somebody else pointed that out to me that they drug that it was more of a zone coverage, and Schulte got taken out of the play by another Troy player. It's sort of like not unlike what happened last week
very similar.
against Iowa State, where they cleared him out, cleared out Schulte as the safety on that side, and Castro let him go, and thinking that Schulte would be there, and Schulte's not there, and because they ran a post route. So
Yeah, of course, Castro, he acknowledged too, of course, that was 2-man, and his job is to be with the guy even when he turns up the field. The learning point for Castro, of course, is don't play the out route. The out route's not going to beat us. That wheel route might.
yeah,
So give up the short throw and force them out of bounds, and we'll move on.
yeah. If the out route's there, then just give him that catch and push him out of bounds, or let him dive out of bounds, and you live to fight another day. You can't give up 30-yard passes in that situation.
Yeah,
and give up 10.
Castro is one of my favorite defensive players, so I hated to see him mess up. But he's still only human, of course, and he'll learn. I mean, he'll learn from that too, because he's a smart player. And the thing I love about Castro, when's the last time he missed a tackle? He just simply doesn't miss tackles. It's amazing to watch him.
Yeah.
I say that. I think he might have had one today, but it's rare when he does. I say that.
Yeah, he's very rarely. I just thought it was a good, solid performance. Inconsistent, but solid. I mean, now the games really start to matter. Now the next 9 are what you play for.
Yeah, and they've
I
got.
couldn't help but notice that Minnesota did pitch a shutout today.
Yeah.
So that'll be a challenge. It won't come easy.
Not to mention that the DBs have to cover Ohio State's wide receivers in 3 weeks. So
yes, that'll be another
clean up
challenge.
those big plays.
Well,
We've
I
got
have faith
that bye week, and we're
faith.
going to need it because we'll be a little bit beaten up after next week.
Yeah, I have faith in Phil Parker. I think he'll get them figured out. He always does. So
yeah,
I agree.
Hey guys, well, I got to run here, but unless you got other questions.
Yeah, no, Coach, you have anything?
Can't think of anything. We've covered so many things already, Tom, and we just appreciate you always joining us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Love joining you guys, and hopefully we'll have some good news next week, next Saturday night from Minneapolis.
We need to retrieve the stolen pig.
Yeah, so
That's right. We haven't seen Floyd for a while.
Yeah, PJ allegedly slept with the trophy, so we've got to probably bring some disinfectant with him. So
Or at least,
get the stink off that pig.
At least
right?
if you pass it through a car wash, if nothing else.
Absolutely. You guys have a great night.
Thanks,
Tom.
Thank you.
Always good to hear from our very own Tom Kakert. All right, we're going to get to a quick break here. I'm told that Mr. Corey Brada may join us shortly for a couple of minutes here before we get to our call-in line. But I'm going to send us to a break here for just a moment, and we'll be right back. If you want a better quality snack for game day or any day, check out what they offer at iowasmokehouse.com. Iowa Smokehouse offers a full lineup sure to satisfy you and your family's snacking needs. Whether it's thick and tender cuts of beef jerky, flavorful meat sticks, or delicious steak bites, or even ketchup and barbecue sauces, you will never need to look elsewhere. Tasting is believing. Visit www.iowasmokehouse.com and use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your next order. That's iowasmokehouse.com and use code Hawkeyes for 15% off your next order. Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson is proudly presented by Brad Van Meter at State Farm in Des Moines. Call Brad for a free quote on auto, life, renters, and even homeowners insurance at 515-256-6480 or visit bradvanmeter.com. Again, that's Brad Van Meter at State Farm in Des Moines at 515-256-6480.
Hey folks, Corey Brada here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Hope you're enjoying our post-game coverage. I'm not here, but all I can say is weddings are difficult during the month of September and during Iowa fall football season. But We appreciate you being here. And part of the reason you're here, part of the reason we're here is because of our sponsors, Ascent Nutrition. I want to reintroduce this wonderful company. You've heard me talk about them for a number of years. Some of you know about Lance Shuttler. He is an Iowa graduate. As you see on your screen, this is an Iowa company. And this is a company helping people across the globe with health, with nutrition. And Lance is as passionate about our Hawkeyes as he is about helping people. As I've spoken with Lance over the course of time, I continue to be impressed with what they're doing. They're a company with strong Iowa roots. They go through rigorous third-party testing so you can trust what you're buying. And there's a 90-day money-back guarantee. That's key here, folks. You will be happy with your purchase. Their products are all organic. They're wild harvested, ensuring that they're pure, they're clean. And the two products that I wanted to highlight as I scroll below here, they're pine needle extract and their humic and fulvic acid. For a limited time, Ascent is offering 15% off when you purchase their pine needle extract and their humic and fulvic acid detox bundle. Just click on the link in the description or type in www.goascentnutrition.com/Hawkeyes. You'll see this screen when you do so. Use the code Hawkeyes15 at checkout and you'll get this awesome discount and improve your health. Again, that's Hawkeyes15. Click the link in the description for an awesome bundle courtesy of Ascent Nutrition and from the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Ryan Glick, co-founder and CEO of Groove. And if you're a real estate professional, I have something I think you're going to be interested in. We've developed a platform that's transforming the way deals are prospected and managed in the real estate world. With Groove, you can organize real estate data in one place and share real estate deals with just one click. Join other real estate pros and reclaim up to 90% of your time. Head over to letsgroove.com/signup and start your free trial today.
Well, we are joined by the voice of From the Hawkeye of the Storm, Mr. Corey Brada.
Hey, guys. Hey, Don.
Hey,
You're looking
Corey, how
good.
are you?
I'm looking good. You're looking good, Don. Was that a stressless game there in Kinnick this afternoon?
I was very stress-free in the second half, but not quite so much in the first.
Well, I can tell you this. In that at halftime, we were just, for anybody that doesn't know, I don't know if you alluded to this, Kyle, but I was involved in a wedding this afternoon. So, of course, I wasn't watching the game during the ceremony. The ceremony started right as the ball was kicked, but ceremony was done, and we were about ready to head into the reception, and I saw the score, 14-10, and I looked at the box score because I had people blowing up my phone about how concerning the performance was. And, Don, I haven't watched the game from start to finish. And for people that don't know, we are going live tomorrow night, and I haven't talked to you about specifics, but I think the plan is 8 p.m., Don, unless that doesn't work for you.
No,
But I'll be able to watch the game in its entirety. But the little bit of glimpse that I got into the game in the second half and then looking at the box score, I thought Tom hit the nail on the head here just a second ago. I don't think people need to be panicking at this point. Like,
no.
if there's any part of it, here's why you'd panic, Don. You'd panic if I was not running the ball well and, scoring in the teens against a team like Troy. But if the concern comes back to giving up big plays, what happened to having faith in the best DC in the country in Phil Parker? I mean, I know TJ Hall's struggling, and I know we've talked about. I mean, we knew that we knew teams were going to target the other side of the field opposite Jamari Harris. And obviously, here's a team in Troy that's got a wideout that can test whoever that is. They'll figure this out. I mean, if they go to Minnesota and win, and I think we can assume that that's going to be a difficult game. You mentioned it just a minute ago, Don. Minnesota defensively has been pretty good, even though that they lost that game to North Carolina. That was not the fault of the defense. That was a low-scoring game. So I have no question the offense is going to be tested. I don't know that Minnesota, based on what I saw in that North Carolina game, can really test. I don't even know that they can test Iowa out wide like Troy can. And that's odd that I'd say that of a Minnesota team because typically they have great wideouts. But that's a different look team with PJ. So I guess I would have wanted to call in here briefly just because I'm not, without having watched the game in its entirety, the box score and the little bit in the second half that I was able to catch a glimpse of, I'm not that concerned. Don, am I being a little overly optimistic?
Well, we know one thing. If you can run the ball effectively and play good defense and be more sound than your opponent in the kicking game. And those are all good, realistic goals for us. You can beat all kinds of people. Now, to beat the really good teams, you need to be able to be effective with both run and pass, because obviously, if you cannot be a threat in the passing game, then they'll load the box on you and dare you to throw, and at that point you'll be in trouble. So we have to improve with our pass offense going forward. But the thing that's encouraging to me, Corey, as you know, 19 for 23, and a skeptic would say, well, they were all dump-offs, and the truth is, no, they weren't. There were some balls thrown at an intermediate level, and they weren't always perfectly thrown, but our guys made some catches, even if the throw was a little bit off. So that's a good sign. You know, we hit any number of receivers that were 15 or 20 yards downfield, and, of course, those turned into bigger plays. We got to see our punt returner and kick returner with the ball under his arm on offense, and I'm excited about that because I think he can give us more ability after the catch than some of the other guys. And once again, number 5 was solid. I think we have a lot of confidence in Gill, and we should, because he's a reliable pass receiver.
And Caleb Brown finally got a catch today on an impressive play. I did see that. We did have, so the wedding party, I was not the one that prompted this, but part of the wedding party had the game on their phone during the reception. So I did.
You had nothing to do with that, Corey.
No, I promise it was not my phone, but I gladly obliged to watching it. So anyways, but it was nice to see Caleb Brown get on the board. I just think, again, schedule-wise, we keep talking about the schedule, Don. You and I talked about this a month leading up to the season, that the schedule just works out beautifully. And I think we all hoped that Iowa State, that would be a win. But we all said, hey, the pass offense is probably, at least I said it, the pass offense is likely going to struggle in September. And I'm still counting on that pass offense really taking a step forward after the Ohio State game. And the reason I say that is, first of all, if you can get a win against Minnesota, that's a huge game, obviously. Under the lights, rivalry, trying to get the pig back from what happened last year. But the other aspect of this, Don, is with the issues that we're talking about that we believe are correctable with Phil Parker and company. And I'd say some of the issues on special teams, Reese Dakin, his numbers have been a little bit underwhelming. Now, I don't know how much improvement can be made midseason with some of that, but he's obviously proven preseason he's got a huge leg. And I don't know that he's quite demonstrating that. Obviously, that punt that resulted in a touchdown today was not a very well kicked ball. So I guess my big thing is you've got 3 weeks here, Don, if you can survive the Minnesota game. And I say that assuming they're going to lose to Ohio State, because we all predicted that anyway. So let's just assume they lose to Ohio State. You get Ohio State, you're at Minnesota, and a bye week. So theoretically, if you can survive Minnesota, the way I look at it is, hey, we're not right where you wanted to be with, obviously the loss to Iowa State hurts, but going into that home stretch, you're looking at 2 losses, but you've got 3 more weeks to work on giving up big plays. And I just have to think, like Tom said, that Iowa can figure out how to button things up on the back end. And I don't think Reese Dakin's been bad. I saw some chatter on that before the game started. I think he's been a little overwhelming with I don't want to say leg strength, because I don't think that's the nature of this. Don, you may be able to tell us what his big problem is. But, I go back to the punt he had last week that ended up, a short punt. Iowa State goes on the field, scores a field goal and wins the game. And today, of course, the punt return for a touchdown. He's got to be better. But as you mentioned, Caden Weegens looked good. And Caleb Johnson is playing like a workhorse that we've needed. Iowa has needed a guy like Caleb Johnson. And so far, numbers-wise, now I know that the 2 of the 3 weeks have been against mediocre competition. However, numbers-wise, he's looked like the Wisconsin type of back that Iowa has missed over the course of years. So
Right.
I just think there's time here. And if you have faith in anybody, it's going to be LeVar Woods to clean up a couple things on special teams. It's Phil Parker to button up his position group, which is the DBs. And, boy, that's a big game next week and a night game. And that's a late post game.
It absolutely is. And something else for you to think about, if I'm not mistaken, the game after Ohio State is Washington. And Washington got knocked off today by Washington State.
Yeah.
So, we suspected, I suspected before the season started, they lost a lot of good coaches. They lost a lot of good players. They're still solid, but they're not at championship level either.
Let's remember this whole schedule is not Murderers Row. So,
Right.
I mean, they get a Wisconsin team that got their pants pulled down. I mean, they got their pants pulled down and pushed into a lake against an Alabama team that was, I want to say rebuilding, because I don't know if Alabama ever rebuilds, but as big of a rebuild as they've experienced in the last couple of decades. So this is a very vulnerable schedule. And,
I'll say it this way, that Wisconsin game, Corey, I bet you a lot of Wisconsin fans lost a lot of money on that game. They didn't think they'd win, but they thought they'd cover the points. It wasn't even close.
And they didn't even come close, Don.
No,
That's right.
You come close. So anyways, I got to get going. I got to eat some cake. But I'm going to tell you something right now. We'll be back tomorrow, myself and Coach Patterson at 8 p.m. And for all the haters out there, keep on hating, because I'm going to eat cake. I'm going to enjoy the evening. And then I'm going to go on the show tomorrow night to gloat and celebrate an Iowa win. And I'll get to watch the game before. So Don, I look forward to it. People need to make sure, tell their friends, we're going to be live again tomorrow night. And I'm guessing part of that show, since people have kind of digested this by then, will be to preview that game against the Gophers, because that will be a big one on a national broadcast on NBC. And it'll be fun to get Floyd back. I think they'll win that game. And there's tons of motivation to get it done in Minneapolis.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate your help, sir.
All right. Enjoy your cake. All right. Well, good to hear from Corey. I know he's not with us for the most part tonight, but as Corey said, Corey and Coach Patterson will be live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So if you're not seeing the host on the screen that you'd like to be seeing, then join us again tomorrow night at 8 p.m. And the big boy himself, Corey Brada, will be back.
And I can promise the listeners, by then, Kyle, I would have seen the game all over again.
Yes. Yep. And that's always good. We had that in week 1 against Illinois State. It was great to have you go back and provide some additional thoughts, because obviously viewing in the stadium versus viewing on television and on tape is completely different. So, so it'll be lots to look forward to tomorrow night with Corey and Coach Patterson at 8 p.m. Let's get to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line here. I've been a little late on getting to callers. But we're going to get to a few tonight. We do have to keep it short. Only got about 45 minutes left here live. So keep the calls short. Try to condense to 1 or 2 questions. But let's get to our first Iowa Smokehouse call-in line caller. Alex, welcome to the show. Oh, let's see.
No sound, Alex.
How about now? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I had my mic muted. I was talking with my wife. Sorry about that.
All good.
So you said I'm going to be quick on here. The things I've noticed between these 3 games, specifically with Illinois State and then Iowa State and Troy, Tim Lester always talked about motion. From what I could see from Iowa State and then the first watching of Troy, very little wide receiver motion like what we saw against Illinois State. So I don't know if Kirk had said anything to do that, because against Illinois State, we saw a lot more wide receiver motion. Kirk wasn't there. Iowa State and now Troy, very little wide receiver motion to kind of diagnose the defense of what they're in. Caleb Brown, I think it's pretty criminal that he has not played as much as he has. Now I know Kirk always preaches, doing quote unquote the little things, and obviously he had that first game suspension for the OWI, and if he served, quote unquote served his time, he is probably one of our best athletes, or one of our better athletes on the team. So it's kind of curious to see why he's not getting the snaps. And then we saw a brand new wide receiver out there. I cannot remember his name. It wasn't Jared Bowie. It was somebody else. I think it was some last name of Howard, if I remember correctly. I was hoping to get on before Tom Caker so you guys could talk about Caden Piper. We saw him in the offensive line. I don't know if Jennings Dunker or Connor Colby got pulled due to injury or just poor performance. I know one of the sacks, Connor Colby let the guy, missed his block, and that's one of the sacks that got to Cade. And then, I'm going to make this comparison. In 2022, Keegan Johnson had a soft tissue injury. We didn't see him all year except for against Nevada. Seth Anderson has a soft tissue injury, and we haven't seen him all year. I don't think we'll see him at all. I expect him to transfer out. it's just we're in 3 games in. Soft tissues, I know they're kind of hard to come back from, but still, it's just I've seen it before, and I'm just gonna call that now. And then TJ Hall, I mean, I trust in Phil Parker. I think as Iowa fans, trust in Phil Parker, trust in LeVar Woods. Yes, we don't have Torrey Taylor or Cooper DeJean on punt returns, but those 2 guys are, for the last few years, we put a lot of weight on them to win games. And last year we won 10 games because of those 2 people and the people they put out on the field. So yeah, they had the secondary had a bad game. TJ Hall had a rough game. But I trust Phil to put the right guys out on the field and have, make the right plays. Same thing with LeVar Woods. Reese Dankins is a freshman. He'll make those mistakes. The big concern going into the season on the defense was our pass rusher. I think we found a couple of them in Max Llewellyn and Brian Allen. And then there's one thing, 3 more things, and I'll get off. There's always a talk of running backs for a team you want to pair and a spare. Well, I think our pair is Caleb Johnson and Jazz Patterson. Caleb's your bigger kind of home run guy. Jazz, the way he runs, he's not afraid to contact. He's not afraid to put his shoulder down and go drive into the defenders. And then your spare, I think, is Kamari Moulton. And then I guess the more concerning thing is between all 3 games, we haven't put a full 60 minutes together. We've put a half together. Right. Second half against Illinois State, first half against Iowa State, second half against Troy. We have and I don't know what the remedy is for that. And then the last thing I'll say is Cade in his presser today said there is a coach on the Michigan staff. I wrote his name down. Greg Harden. He actually passed away today due to surgery complications. So I know Kate said it was weighing heavy on his heart during the game. So hopefully, maybe play some inspired football next week against Minnesota. I'm fairly confident going into Minnesota. I don't like what they have on offense. I think their defense is overhyped. I think their defense is good the last few years because of, if you look at their time of possession with Minnesota, they've been top 4. The other 3 above them are like Army and Navy because they run that triple option. The reason why the defense is so good is because they always have that. What?
Mo Ibrahim had something to do with the defensive time on the field.
But yes, so they relied on Minnesota's offense holding the ball a lot. Well, I think with their new quarterback, and I know Darius Taylor, their running back's pretty good. He's no Mo, but we've seen today Iowa can really stuff the run. So we're going to tell the quarterback to throw the ball on us. So hopefully going into that game, Phil Parker will have that secondary ready to play and make sure they get their hips right too, because that's what happened the last 3 times. Xavier got his hips turned. Same thing with TJ. So, but anyways, I'll get off. Let someone else go on since I know we have a short time. But thanks for taking my call.
One comment about. I'm curious, Alex, what you think. One comment about Minnesota. I did watch the North Carolina game, and let's just say it this way: I was not overly impressed with their new quarterback.
Yeah.
He just appeared
I can't
to be
think of his name.
Brunson
or Brunson or
maybe
something
he's played
like
better since. I don't know.
I just don't know about their pass catch.
guy.
I think the Minnesota quarterback. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's played better since the Carolina game. I don't know. But
I know they're up big on Nevada, but
yeah.
So
it's it is what it is. Comment from Kirk Ferentz. Actually, I just found this after the game. Kirk Ferentz said on Hawkeye's offensive lineman Jennings Dunker exiting the game, he said, quote, "We have a couple of guys cramping up today. I think that was his issue. Really haven't had much humidity this year in practice anytime. I think that was a factor." So for what it's worth.
But I think Cade Piper played pretty well. I mean, when I saw him in the game, I was run blocking, and someone had posted about the tight ends blocking. It seems like they're not they're not blocking as well as they should have. Now, I don't know. I haven't really rewatched the game and see where they line up and what their assignments are. But, that could maybe be a concern. But if I was, was going almost 200 yards of rushing, I think regardless if the tight ends are blocking, we should be okay. So, all right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Good to talk to you, Alex, as always.
Yep.
Anything else you'd like to add on to any of that, Coach John?
No, not really. I'm always concerned, of course, to play the Gophers. As you know, we've pretty much owned the Gophers in recent years. Um, all I have to do is think back to last fall, and I think we had one stolen from us a year ago against Minnesota. But we need to not dwell on that either. We need to win this game simply because we got to get the pig back, and doesn't have to be any kind of big revenge factor from last year's game. But we just got to go out and execute better, clean up our mistakes, and be a more sound football team than the Gophers. If we do that, we'll win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to get to a quick break here, and then we'll take another couple of callers before we wrap up at the end of the night. We'll be right back with more. If you want a better quality snack for game day or any day, check out what they offer at iowasmokehouse.com. Iowa Smokehouse offers a full lineup sure to satisfy you and your family's snacking needs. Whether it's thick and tender cuts of beef jerky, flavorful meat sticks, or delicious steak bites, or even ketchup and barbecue sauces, you will never need to look elsewhere. Tasting is believing. Visit iowasmokehouse.com and use code Hawkeyes for 15% off your next order. That's iowasmokehouse.com and use code Hawkeyes for 15% off your next order. Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson is proudly presented by Brad Van Meter at State Farm in Des Moines. Call Brad for a free quote on auto, life, renters, and even homeowners insurance at 515-256-6480 or visit bradvanmeter.com. That's 515-256-6480 for Brad Van Meter at State Farm in Des Moines. All right, let's go back to our next to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line and talk to James. James, how are we doing? James, you there? All right, we'll check in on James in just a moment here. Let's go to we've got an interesting call for you, Don. Minnesota Dave joins.
Hey, how's it going?
Dave, how are you?
Dave.
All right, I'll be honest with you. If you told me that we were going to beat Nevada the way we did, I would call you a liar. I thought this would be a better game. If you told me that you guys were going to struggle until the end against Troy, I mean, I would call you a liar too. So, but yeah, I think the Gophers did very, very well today. I was at the game, so I didn't see your Hawkeyes play. But here's one thing I have to say. Iowa's defensive backfield is just not as good without Coop. It's just not as good. I mean, he's the big playmaker there, and that's the big thing I've noticed. I mean, we struggled a little bit in the beginning, getting on the ground, and then we finally figured out how to break a couple yards near the end of the game. But our quarterback looked really good in the beginning of the game, and then we just only went for screen passes and bubble passes that didn't really work out at the end. But just to keep it on the just to keep it on the ground and run the clock out.
Right.
The only thing I got mad about with PJ today was Max, our star quarterback, played all the way until the last, I would say, 2 minutes. I'm like, okay, the game's in the hand. We don't need him to get injured now.
Right.
Take him out. Take all our star players out.
We've had some of those same issues down here, wanting to see the backup quarterback sooner.
Yeah.
When the game's on ice. Yeah.
Yeah. The game is over. But I'm really excited for next week. I'm already really excited. It's going to be a maroon out. I got my shirt. I have to show you this. Here's my shirt for my maroon out. So I am extremely excited for next week's game. And we don't get to freeze our butts off. That's the other thing.
Yeah, very true. This has been a cold game. Dave, you're going to start some fights in our chat with that the symbol on that shirt.
The symbol on that shirt.
Yeah. Is that a Cooper DeJean?
Cooper DeJean waving his finger. Yeah. with the rule on the back about invalid fair catch.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a great game. I can't wait. It's like I said, both teams have very big question marks going in. I really feel that Minnesota to win this game is stuff Iowa's running game. If they can control or contain the running back, who's it, Johnson?
Yep.
Running back.
Right.
Yeah, if they can
What would you say
contain
is the
running
strength
back,
of your
we should be able to win this game.
What would you say is the strength of your defense, Dave? Would it be pass defense or run defense?
What?
What is the strength of your defense, run or pass?
Right now, I would say run. We were doing better against the run against Nevada today. That's just, but they didn't really run the ball all that much. They were trying to spread and trying to do screens and maybe do a couple plays down the field. Their quarterback was the biggest thing is a scrambler, and we kind of contained him. So that was the biggest part about us winning this game as easily as we did. And when he made mistakes. We capitalized 10 points off turnovers, which would be a big thing if we keep on doing that, even against Iowa. Create turnovers and capitalize on them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Any other thoughts about the game next week, Dave? ESPN has it as a 50-50 coin flip.
Who hates Iowa? We hate Iowa. All right.
The feeling is mutual, Dave. We look forward to a good game next week.
Okay. Yeah, bye-bye.
All right. Thanks for calling. Always good to hear from opposing fans on game week. I hope we'll have some fun with that tomorrow night. I'm sure usually Corey gets a few Minnesota trolls in the chat, especially after what happened last year. Coach, question for you. Is Kirk Ferentz the type of guy that would really belabor something like what happened last year and really push it onto the players as motivation? Or is he more of a, as far as when he communicates to the players, does he more sort of just take care of your business and we need to do what we need to do to win the football game? Or does he focus on some of those, hot button issues that might get the team motivated to play?
I guess it wouldn't be a huge point of emphasis to relive the game a year ago. A lot of the players, of course, that are so prominent on this year's team were also prominent a year ago. So even if he never said a word about it, they haven't forgotten. And we all know that's a game that we felt was a lost opportunity. And in that regard, I don't think he'll make much of an issue at all of what happened a year ago. Okay. He might bring it up in passing, but it's not going to be the rally cry going forward for the game, I don't think.
Yeah. The one thing that I do really regret about this game is, or that I wish I could see, Cooper DeJean return punts against Minnesota again this year. How
appropriate would it be if number 21 broke loose for a long punt return this year?
It would be absolutely ironic because, as you know, I'm sure number 21 looks to number 3 for motivation as far as punt returns at Iowa go.
Yeah, that would put a smile on number 3's face, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got JT. Welcome to the show, JT.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Uh-oh. Yep,
I can hear you.
Okay. It's kind of weird that we haven't heard from Minnesota fans for 9 years, and now they come out of the closet and start talking. But I had a question for Coach. Yeah. Have you noticed when Cade is going to throw, it's a passing play, he comes up to the line of scrimmage and he wipes his hands on his towel? Every single time it's a passing play, he does that. If it's a running play, he doesn't do it. Is that something that D coordinators are going to start keying in on? Well,
now that you mentioned it on our show, I think there's a good chance it'll get back to Minnesota. It's funny you mentioned that. I remember years and years ago as a young coach, we had a quarterback named Pete Gales. You might remember Pete. And it was year 1 or 2 here. I can't remember. Probably year 1 because I was coaching the scout team defense at that time, and I observed Pete as a coach. I was watching, and every time that it was a pass play, he would lick his fingers, and on run plays he didn't. And at first I wasn't sure it was 100%, but turned out it was close to 100%. And of course, I didn't say a word to Pete. I simply went to Bill Snyder, and I said, Bill, I know you want to know this. And I know what else he did. If it was a run play, he had a bad habit of looking at the point of attack. So I mentioned to Bill too. If it's a run play, I know where you're going to run it because it's where Pete looks shortly before the ball is snapped. And of course, we got that corrected. And those are the kind of things you need to be aware of. So I'm glad you mentioned it to me because as I look at the game, I'll go back and see if I can record the fact that it is 100% reliable. Maybe it's not 100%, but it sounds like it's certainly something we need to correct.
Okay.
Thank you for giving us that alert.
Yeah. Another question I had for you. Let's say that you were coaching today's game, and we start with the ball on the -25 with, I think it was like 50-something seconds left or a minute left going into halftime. We run 2 plays, we get to the -40.
Right.
If we run 2 more plays and get 15 more yards, we could easily let Drew Stevens have a shot at kicking a field goal. Would you try to take that shot? Would you try to take that chance? Or would you just try to go into halftime and recoup like Kirk did?
Well, I would take that chance if only because, when I was an offensive coordinator, I felt I had enough confidence in our guys for understanding what to do. When I used to lecture at clinics, I would always ask them, what do you want me to talk about? And invariably it was 2-minute offense. It's something, were you a fan back in the 80s and 90s? Were you an Iowa fan? Did you see us play back in the 90s?
I'm a 90s kid. Nope.
Okay. Well, you remember all kinds of winning 2-minute drives back in those days. We were really good at it. So it's safe to say if we had 60 seconds left and had 1 timeout and we were down by 4, yes, we're going to be smart. We're not going to be stupid because one of the precepts of being effective with 2-minute offense is never, ever lose sight of the fact that to lose the ball is to lose the game. Well, that wouldn't necessarily be true, of course, in the first half, but clearly at the end of the game, it is true. So that same thought process goes through a quarterback's mind, even at the end of the first half. You got to protect the ball. Don't throw the ball up for grabs. And if we don't score, we can live with that. If they score, then absolutely not. So protect the ball at all costs. That's true at the end of the half as well as at the end of the game. At the end of the game, of course, if it's a 1-score game, protection of the ball means everything. And you'll see the really good NFL quarterbacks. They always make the right decisions in those 2-minute situations. And the bottom line, rather than risk losing the ball, they'll dump the ball down and live to find another down. And of course, they're very efficient with the clock. And the other thing we need to think about, I know Coach Fry, the defensive staff used to say, oh my God, I wish we could call a timeout sometimes, but I know we're going to get the wrath of Coach Fry if we do. And Coach Fry's reasoning was sound. I want us to hang on to those timeouts because we might need them at the end of either half. And in that regard, it's unfortunate that we only had 1 timeout. But I do remember we were on the 25 after the kickoff. 40 yards would have put us on the other 35. And then if you allow 8 yards for the placement of the ball, that's a 53-yard field goal. I would bet our guy will make that 53-yard field goal. So we need 40 yards in 60 seconds. That's very doable. And I mentioned earlier, JT, to Kyle, if nothing else, let's at least spread them out and present like we're trying to move the ball and score points at the end of the half. And then let's run safe plays. So if we, obviously the best chance we have to gash them is to spread them out a little bit. And that gives the quarterback better access to holes in the defense. You can just about bet on it that they're playing zone at that point in time. And there's a lot of simple throws you can make. And as you mentioned, JT, it doesn't take too much to move you 40 yards. You get out of bounds, you use the timeout if you have to. Now, next thing you know, you're in field goal range. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for answering the questions. I'll be back tomorrow night. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for joining us, JT. All right, we're going to go to a quick break here. We will be right back with a couple more callers from our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line before we call it for the night, and we will wait until tomorrow night when Corey and Coach Patterson talk to us again at 8 p.m. We'll see you in just a second.
Casmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Casmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Casmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at Casmium.com. Casmium, where sports technology sparks victory. And wanted to take another moment to thank RTI Threads. If you've not seen their awesome website, you can get your hands on awesome NIL apparel. Just scroll down, hover over the NIL athletes tab, scroll down to football. You can see apparel lines for, hey, how about this guy, Cooper DeJean, who's now in the NFL playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, but also how about these budding stars, Jacob Gill, Zach Lutmer, Carson Shire, or the Gravedigger, Aaron Graves. Just click on the name there on rtithreads.com and browse through the selection. They've got so many products with authentic logos, original logos. This stuff is just awesome. You're benefiting the Hawkeye athletes. Great options here, folks. Again, rtithreads.com. We appreciate RTI Threads. Make sure you get your NIL apparel. Benefit the Hawkeye athletes at large. Makes for a great gift, or maybe just spoiling yourself a little bit on this Saturday. Thank you for being here, folks. Visit rtithreads.com as a thank you for making this show possible.
All right. Let's get to a couple of super chats, and then we'll get to a couple more callers before we wrap up here. D. Rulifson, thank you for the donation. RTI needs a "It Wasn't a Fair Catch" t-shirt. I'm sure that's out there somewhere, Coach, isn't it?
Probably.
I would hope so. If nobody's been creative enough to put that out there, then I don't know what we're doing here. Ask a Bum, thank you for the donation, says Cade almost never throws deep. Coach, I don't know. I can't remember the play that it was on. It's heading towards the south end zone. Cade missed Luke Lachey wide open, streaking towards the end zone. Did you catch that play? And then were there any other deep misses that you saw from Cade today?
Yeah, I can't remember. Were we driving to the north or south?
I think we were going to the south end zone. Which one says Iowa on it? I remember seeing the video. Which end zone is Iowa? Is it north? Is that north end zone?
Gosh, I'm not sure.
You would think I would be able to answer that question after so many years of watching Iowa football. But.
So much of the TV coverage, of course, is shot from the west side of the stadium. So if we were driving to the right, we'd be going to the south.
Okay. Yeah, he missed Luke Lachey wide open. But I and even disregarding that play, there are not a lot of deep pass attempts from this offense, and we've talked about the underthrows from Cade. I mean, as we get into Big Ten play here, that has to be something that they consider, right? I mean, if you can't stretch the defense more than, it's been 20 yards down the field or less, that will become a big problem later on in the season.
It could. Some teams are more vulnerable to over-the-top throws than others. Primarily, you think of teams that want to press and play man-free type, we call it. If there's a free safety that's playing center field, and oftentimes there is. So if they want to press, obviously, then that's a greater argument to at least take shots over the top. Let's face it, if that corner stumbles and trips, then the only way the play can be poor would be for you to overthrow that open receiver. Other possibilities, just exposed in one-on-one coverage, even if it's zone, the typical 3-deep stuff without a lot of protection underneath. The corner's a little bit conflicted. He's got to defend deep, and yet he wants to have to react up and start underneath throws for minimal yards. So those are the best opportunities, I think, to go deep. Not that you can't throw deep against two deep coverage. You can do that too. Or sometimes you hear people talking about quarter coverage. That could be quarters all the way across the field, or oftentimes you'll see to the wide field. You'll see a team play quarter coverage to the wide field and then play half coverage into the boundary. The thought being, we want to eliminate those easy throws into the boundary against off coverage. And that's the argument for rolling the quarter up on the short side of the field. Those are just some of the basic coverages that you do see. My point is, though, if some teams want to be daring with their coverage, then obviously you have maybe a greater opportunity for your pass offense to be feast or famine. Underneath cuts are taken away from you, maybe. So your only chance really is to get some big yardage over the top.
Yeah. They mentioned this during the broadcast. Matt Reeves says, I'm also concerned about the laces stuff with Cade. That might be a big reason he's been inaccurate and throwing low. The broadcast mentioned that Cade doesn't throw with the laces on the football. I don't know if you've ever discussed this on the show before, but what impact does that have? Is that all personal preference? Is there a right way and a wrong way to do it? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, we were not in the gun nearly as much years ago as they are now. So it was easier for the ball to come up on the snap, as it should, for the ideal position for throwing, and that would be fingers across the laces. And that's the way we taught passing the football, if you could. A lot of quarterbacks, even in the gun, they'll catch it and they'll just instinctively spin the ball to find the laces. They do it without even thinking about it because they've done it, 10,000 times. And it's easy for a lot of quarterbacks to find the laces. If they commented that Cade sometimes did not throw with the laces, maybe he's never been conditioned to worry about it. The thing I don't know, unless I really study it, is if Cade has more accuracy issues without the laces than with the laces. You would think, though, that Cade would have a good handle on that over his lifetime. And for that matter, that Tim Lester, now that he's had a chance to watch him for a period of time, that they would pick up on whether or not that was part of the reason for lack of accuracy. That's a good question, though, and certainly one that's worth investigating.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to have to keep this super short. We got about 15 minutes left. I got 3 or 4 callers to get through. Let's make sure that we keep it to a question or two for Coach towards the football mastermind, and then and we'll keep it moving. Let's try James again. James, are you with us? No.
James is playing hardball with us, isn't he?
Yeah, James is playing hard to get. Well, we'll get back to James hopefully tomorrow night. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line with Corey. You've been on hold for a long time, sir. Thank you for waiting.
Gentlemen, I didn't go to the game. I sold my tickets. I was dying. I grabbed the fork and I considered stabbing myself in the eye.
And that was at halftime, you saying?
Oh, that was perhaps the most painful period of time of my life. I guess, Don, my question for you is, TJ Hall is on film now for getting burned deep. And what would you do? I mean, you're offensive coordinator, but you know, if you were the defensive coordinator, what would you do when this guy's on film getting burned, number one? And number two, from a schematics standpoint, you know how they run that receiver and they make it look like he's going to take a quick out. And the minute he takes that out route, our safety, whether it's Schulte, Nwangpa, will break for the center of the field. And so he's basically on his own. Now, what can be done? Because that's on film and he's getting burned repetitively. What can be done from a defensive standpoint to stop this? This is, we have 2 consecutive games where we've been burned for it's got to be at least 250 yards. In your opinion, what can be done to, thwart this craziness? This is not Iowa defensive football.
Yeah, well, the simple thing to do is eliminate the coverage. And I think our problems. One of TJ's, I believe he was in off coverage, and I don't know. I didn't get a really good look at it when it happened. The first one, I think, for what I know, he was absolutely at fault on that one. The next one, I'm not sure, Corey, that he was. It looked like they were playing half coverage. If they're playing half coverage, he's a flat defender. That deep guy's not his man. I was, with curiosity, I was watching the bench when he came off. Kirk he wasn't upset with him in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not sure that Phil was either, because next series he was right back out there playing again. So I'm not sure that second one belonged to Corey. I'd have to see it. I'm going to see the TV copy tonight, and I'll know when I look at it who's at fault. Probably. No guarantee. I guess I can solve it by looking at it. Let's face it, the only guys that know for sure who was at fault are the ones that were out there playing or the ones that were coaching on the sideline. But we'll get them corrected. You can bet on that. But you're also right, Corey. Guaranteed you're going to see it again. I mean, they'd be foolish not to hit you with it again. You have to demonstrate that you've corrected your issues, because it will be coming. And it's only a week away. It'll happen next weekend. So let's be sure we're ready for it. I have a lot of faith in Phil Parker. He's a great football coach. He'll get it corrected, even if that means having to put a different player out there. And the same thing would apply to Xavier or any other DB. You've got to correct your mistakes. And the thing that's been so amazing about our pass defense is we virtually never give up home runs. And yet we've had some here in the early season. The good news, that's why it's called non-conference. The real games start next weekend, and not that the other three didn't count. They do count. They all count. We only get to play 12 times. But let's face it, if we can somehow find, just for the sake of argument, let's win the next 9. Well, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people feel we absolutely belong in the playoffs if we can win the next 9. That's going to be difficult to do because a lot of them are good teams, and one of them is a great team. But if I know one thing, all we have to do is continually focus on the next game. That's all that matters. All that matters is how we can defend and how we can execute offensively versus the Gophers. That's all that matters.
Anything else for Coach Corey?
Yeah, I guess. Can you think back to a defensive back that you can recall? Now, you weren't coaching defensive backs, but in your era of coaching, can you think back to a defensive back for Iowa that started off getting, somewhat burned repetitively and then becoming, quite skilled at his craft and recovering?
I think our guy, my recall is that our guy playing for the Broncos right now, when he was a young guy, I do recall him getting beaten some, and they figure it out.
Well, Riley Moss. Yeah, I just between that and then, but I'm going to make this statement because Corey Bratta is absent, so I'm substitute Corey Bratta, and I'm going to tell you right now, the guy that I think changed the entire tone of that game and said, "Oh no, you're in Kinnick, and you're going to respect us," and that was Brian Allen. And that's one of Corey's boys, Brian Allen.
Let's talk about that. I want you to think about this for a minute. It's automatic. Our defensive tackles are out on 3rd and long, right? Well, just imagine. That almost seems unfair. Let me get this straight. You're going to put in 2 fresh guys to replace those defensive tackles. You're going to play with 4 defensive ends. Meanwhile, I'm stuck with those same 5 offensive linemen. Those guys are gassed, especially on a warm September day. It's not even a fair fight. And I realize you got to get by them, and maybe you can't quite make the sack. But today we proved fresh bodies do present an advantage for you when it comes to pass rushing, no doubt about it.
And Llewellyn, I mean, he might be 6'5", but his arms are the length of a 6'7" player, I believe. And I'll tell you, with that spin move, Don, with Max Llewellyn and that spin move, that is, I mean, he looked like AKA Aiden Hutchinson for the Detroit Lions, the Michigan. He's got, it might be a faster spin move and a quicker release off of the tackle than I've seen from Aiden Hutchinson. That is special.
I missed that. I don't know if they showed the replay of that in the stadium or not. I missed that. I'm looking forward to seeing it, though, because I've heard about it.
It's an absolutely beautiful play. Absolutely beautiful.
I think there's more than one. I think there was 2, and there may be more than, there's at least 2. And, the great edge rushers, I think that they claim that you got to have 3 moves. You got to have your power bull rush, and you got to have a swim move, and then you got to have a spin. Well, I'll tell you what, that spin is looking good. If he can work on his swimming, watch out. But it just seemed to me like they put in the reserves. The backups came in and kind of changed the tone of that game. I just think, I'm sure Phil saw that. I mean, they brought an energy that kind of broke got us out of the doldrums.
How many sacks did we end up with today?
I don't have the count, but Herkett himself, what do you have? 2 at least. But it's the pressures, and it's
four team sacks today.
Yeah, Herkett had to have 2. Who else?
Herkett, Brian Allen, and Max Llewellyn.
Of course, yeah, Allen, and then Llewellyn. Llewellyn had also the pressure with the arms up. I was worried that they were going to do him like they did Higgins last week when he had his arms up and they contacted his helmet. I thought they're going to call it again. Thankfully, they didn't, because he didn't, strike him. And what a frightening! Did you see were you at the game? You didn't see the replay when Caleb Johnson took that knee to the back.
Yeah, that was a little bit. I was a little bit concerned when he took that.
I didn't see it.
Oh, it was a violent.
Yeah, it was after the play. It was completely incidental, but it was he took a hard knee to the back of the head, and then went to the sidelines for a couple plays. The official ushered him out of the game.
I thought for sure that was a severe concussion. I thought for sure.
I think I read somewhere, did one of our backs suffer a concussion today? It wasn't Caleb, but
it was. I can't remember. Somebody said something about
Leishon, wasn't it?
Yeah, Leishon maybe had some involuntary movement that people were talking about, where he was after the play, he was shaking a little bit.
Oh wow.
There was something in there. We'll have to check on that for tomorrow night. Corey, I'm gonna have to get to our last 2 people here because we only have a couple minutes left, but appreciate you joining us.
All right, thanks guys.
You bet, Corey.
Thank you, Corey. Yeah, that'll be something to catch up on tomorrow night, because that's always a little bit scary. I want to get to plugging RTI Threads. Corey went through the video here just a moment ago. But shop RTI Threads. Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer all have their merchandise up on rtithreads.com. Check them out. Huge supporter of the show. So make sure you check them out and get your merchandise this season. I think Cooper DeJean's merchandise is still up, last I was told. So maybe a possible last chance grab some of that before it leaves the shop for good. Go back to our RTI Threads player of the game on that note. I'm sure you probably don't have a whole lot of disagreement with me on this one, Coach. Was there any other sort of dark horse honorable mentions you'd like to throw out there today?
No, I think Caleb's deserving. I was proud of the game that Cade put up. The numbers are good. Cade would probably say, well, I had good protection. That's not always true, of course. They had a couple of sacks. But the bottom line in general, he had time to throw, and his receivers did a good job of catching balls that were a little bit off target from time to time.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We're going to have to keep these last two calls pretty short, but let's welcome E to the show. E, what is your name?
Eric.
Eric. Perfect. Oh, thanks for joining us, Eric.
Absolutely. So, Coach Patterson, I actually played against you. I was from Iowa and went to Michigan State.
Okay.
If you remember the 10-10 game.
What year?
Yeah, that was my era, right?
What year? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
What year?
That would have been 88. So I went to Ellsworth Community College, won a national title, and I went to Michigan State. So Iowa, hey, Dan McCarney was my recruiting contact, but you had a couple of good linebackers there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all Big Ten, right? So anyway, so I appreciate being on with you, and I don't think I met you. I didn't met Coach Schneider either, but certainly Alvarez and those guys. So just a couple of things, Corey. When Corey brings up, Llewellyn and all that guys, that we got to think about situational football here. So those guys are teeing off, right? And they're stand up, right? And so not to diminish what they're doing, but that's a different situation. Yeah. So certainly from the 4 down, we're rolling every play. That's completely different. But the one thing I want to talk to you about, Coach, was, and of course, graduated from Michigan State, got my graduate at Iowa, but always a Hawkeye fan. Here's the thing is that, like, what I saw out there today was what I would consider discombobulated in the terms of, like, I think everybody, Alex and everybody has talked about this, like, okay, we won, but what happened? Right. And so that's kind of the feeling. And to me, and talking with some of the players that are out there, I don't talk to the coaching staff, and I understand, sir, that you have relationships with them. So I would never ask anything, but I would just sit here and say, how are the players doing? Because 2 or 3 years ago, we had the NIL come in, and now once you put money into the system, right? Once you put that into the system and people are either performing or not performing, it just seems like we've had a quarter and then 2 quarters and then 3 quarters off and then another quarter. It just seems like everything is discombobulated.
We haven't put together a 60-minute game, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is an Iowa football, and it's just like something's missing. And that's the most disconcerting thing that I've seen. I've been quiet. I watch you guys. I've never called into a show or anything, but it's like there's just something missing here. And to your point earlier, Coach, you're going to go to Minnesota. Now, Minnesota may be down or whatever, but they're still a Big Ten team.
Right.
Yeah. And so we still got to sit here and get ready for that. And I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like I talked to a friend at halftime, and I'm like, he's like, what do you think needs to happen? I said, I think they need to tell the coaches to get the F out of the room, and they need to talk, and they need to figure this out for this game. And then on Sunday, we'll get back and we'll figure it out, right? All hands on deck.
Well, you can bet that the players are going to hear 30 minutes of football is not nearly enough.
Yeah.
We have to play a complete game. We're 0 for 3. We haven't done that in any of the first 3 games.
Yeah.
So no time like the present, because tougher days are ahead if we do not get that done.
Absolutely. Eric, I'm gonna have to move on here just because we're running out of time, but we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that for Eric. We're just running out of time a little bit. I got one more caller to get to before the night is over. We appreciate you joining us once again. Corey and Don will be live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Corey will watch the game from start to finish after digesting his wedding cake, and Coach Patterson will have a chance to watch the tape on film here on TV after going to the game today. So absolutely worth your time to stop by and hear some new thoughts, and after the game's digested for 24 hours, be an interesting conversation as well as previewing that Minnesota game. Let's get to our final caller for the evening on our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line before we hang it up. Erica, welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening. How's it going?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Good. So like everybody else seems to be, I'm feeling very concerned even though we won. I feel that it's not a good sign that we struggled so much against inferior competition. That's very concerning to me. And the other thing that's very concerning that I'm surprised hasn't been talked about more today is that our offense is very one-dimensional. So if a defense, it has a good enough defense to shut us down in the run game, what do we do? And it feels like Kirk just will not switch quarterbacks no matter what. I know that they put Sully in there for the red zone plays because really what other choice they have, because Cade just cannot do it in the red zone. But I don't see why they won't give him more snaps than that. So I'm just very concerned about this one-dimensional issue that we have here. And also, like someone else said, I'm concerned about the fact that we can't seem to play good for more than 30 minutes at a time.
Well, you're right to be concerned, Erica. One thing that comes to mind for me, if you're one-dimensional, there's an expression we use in football, and this is not to be disrespectful to all those left-handed people out there, but there was the term we use sometimes is make them play left-handed. In other words, to make Iowa play left-handed is to load the box and dare us to throw.
Right.
And dare us to beat the other team, knowing that we're going to be hard-pressed to run the ball consistently because they simply outnumber us in the box. Now, not that somebody's going to do that down after down after down, but is it hard to imagine, Erica, if our tendency on first down is 80% run, is it hard to imagine that they might not load the box on first down?
Well, they can't do that because they're going to use all their energy for the first down, and they need to be good for stopping us for 3.
Well, the point is they have more tacklers than we have blockers, and they're all near the ball. So, a typical formation, you've got 5 linemen to block, and at the most, 2 other players in the box. I'm saying 2 tight ends or a tight end and a fullback, whatever the case might be. So you got 7 blockers. Well, the simple solution is put 8 defenders in the box and then see how well they run the ball. It's not impossible to run the ball against a loaded front, but it is a lot harder because they simply outnumber you.
Right.
And if they all defend the right gap, then there's really no place to go. Other than just to run over tacklers, and that's not easy to do either.
It's like Andrew Hodge just said in the chat. He says, I understand Sullivan in the red zone because then the opposing team needs to respect his legs. And that's why that last part about respecting his legs, that's exactly why we need Sullivan in there. Because if he gets, flushed or whatever, he can run, try to make a run for it. Whereas Cade, he's done that on occasion, but he's not mobile. He's not a mobile quarterback. So the fact is, since we're so one-dimensional, that would add an additional dimension to our game if we had a quarterback who was mobile. And we have 2 quarterbacks who are, and we're not playing one of them at all, Marco, and the other one we're playing in the red zone. So it just doesn't make much sense to me. And to me, again, it seems like Kirk has his fingerprints on this, if that's what's going on, because everyone's been claiming the entire offseason / the beginning of the season that Kirk is letting Tim Lester do his thing. I don't know if I'm buying into that still, because why wouldn't Tim, being a quarterback himself and an offensive mind, a legit OC, instead of Brian Ferentz, why wouldn't he try to make that change? I just can't comprehend it.
Well, the thing I find interesting about that too is if you look at Resar, you look at the Sullivan that's on the roster, but also what's the guy's Sullivan,
Jim, right? Jim Sullivan, is it?
Yeah,
Jimmy?
he's the commit, and then Marco
From Indiana. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, from Indiana. Yeah, those. So between the two Sullivans, Marco and Resar, all four of them can run, but the quarterback Iowa's starting cannot run. I don't know. I find that a little bit. Obviously they're looking for something on the recruiting trail as far as mobility and the direction they want to go with the offense, but the quarterback that you're playing still, and last year as well, still is not effective on the ground.
And the other part of it too is that they kept saying all summer long, oh, it's a very close competition between Cade and Sullivan. Well, if it's that close, why not just bench him then already and let Sullivan give him a try?
Right. That hasn't been our history, of course. The best example comes to mind. Remember the game that took 7 hours to play? I think we had two or three.
That was really, yeah.
And Spencer took every snap in that game, even though I think the final was 27-0. I made the comment on one of those weather delays. I said, we could play 120 minutes and they still wouldn't score because they were that poor on offense and we were that good on defense. It was going to take a minor miracle for them to ever score a touchdown. So my point is the lead was safe, even if it was only a couple of touchdowns. The lead was safe. Let's move on to the next quarterback and let's not have to warm up the same quarterback that's been out there playing for the last 5 hours. Let's set him down. He's done.
And then the other thing is, it hard to imagine that Cade gets injured again and that we have to put Sullivan out there? What's going to happen in that scenario? He's not going to feel fully prepared. I mean, I understand he played at Northwestern, has a lot of games under his belt in the within the conference, and that's great. But he hasn't had much game action this year. So it's like, yeah, he can draw on his previous experience from Northwestern, but nonetheless, like, just for security's sake alone, in case Cade does get injured, which is not far-fetched, especially if he starts trying to run more. We know that, having injured himself twice in a row with, on both sides, like both legs, he's going to be like, he's not going to be mobile ever. And so he's kind of impaired in that way. And that's just reality. And it's going to end up being that Sullivan may not be ready if we have to call upon him. Like if we have no choice when Cade goes down.
Yeah, I think just about any defensive coordinator will tell you the guys they worry the most about having to defend are what I've always called combination quarterbacks. They can run and throw.
Yeah.
Because now when you go one back, you might argue, well, they'll deploy to defend the pass. The only problem with that, if the quarterback's a runner, now you've got those 5 linemen we were talking about, plus a tight end. I'm saying you got 3 wideouts out there that are spread out across the field, but you got an attached tight end right beside a tackle. That's 5 linemen, a tight end, and a back. Now you've got 7 blockers because you've involved the quarterback now as a runner. That's why you hear about key draws. Quarterback draws a good play if the guy can run. Because now all of a sudden you need to defend against 7 blockers, not 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm happy we got a win today, but I just, in a weird way, don't feel like we won. You know what I mean? Like there's so many glaring issues that
we have things to clean up. Absolutely true.
Oh, it's really disappointing. And I never thought I'd see the day where the secondary would be, I don't want to say they're horrible. That's not true, but just lacking a little bit like that, and I mean, special teams.
It's the same thing that, relative to the punter too. Like people were complaining about restaking on Twitter. And I'm like, guys, restaking is not that bad. You just watched Torrey Taylor for 4 years. Like the secondary is not that horrible. We just have watched Phil Parker for a decade. Like it's not, is it what we're used to? Probably not. But is it horrible? Is it, even subpar? No, it's not.
I'm not saying it's subpar for a Phil Parker defense. Yes.
Yeah.
And that to me is concerning. Although, really honestly, I'm much more concerned about quarterback because I feel like we have some good wide receiver talent for a change, and it's not going to be properly utilized if Cade is back there because he's just inaccurate when he throws, and that's why our game's one-dimensional again.
Well, the numbers today were pretty impressive. So at least we made some progress in being able to throw and catch a ball. That's for sure.
And we also don't know, again, like Sullivan, for all we know, he could be a much better passer. We don't know, though, because we don't see him.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know. I feel like we shoot ourselves in the foot by not giving him more snaps.
I really don't understand that. Like, I mean, against Illinois State, to not get him in for one, give him one drive, or Troy. I mean, you could say too, like, they were trying to build confidence with Cade or whatever, but like the fact that they either didn't put Sullivan in the game in either Troy or Illinois State, or, the different direction you could go with it was we didn't play well enough to be in a position where we had to put the backups in early. Right. We didn't take care of business early enough against Illinois State and Troy to the point where we could definitely afford to get him in. Either way, it's a complete failure as far as those first 3 games go, as far as getting Sullivan some experience throwing the ball.
And I'd like to address – I'm sorry, Coach. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to bring up something else, but I think you want to say something about the topic we're already on.
Well, I was just trying to think back to the Illinois State game. I don't remember the score after 3 quarters. I think we might have had 33. Do you know if we scored 7 or 14 in the fourth? I can't remember.
I don't remember either.
I think it was just 7, but I could be wrong.
Anyway, the point was, I'll put it this way. If we were not at 33 at the end of 10 quarters and the 3 quarters, we certainly hit 33 early in the fourth.
Yeah,
maybe we were already 33. I can't recall.
We hit 33 with 11 minutes to go.
Okay, I thought at the very least we'd change them.
Yeah, I did too.
And I know people said, well, we got to get the rust off of Cade. My counter to that is we better also get the rust off the backup because we may need him sooner than later for one reason or another.
That could really come back to bite us. That really could.
Yeah.
Well, we play all kinds of other backups at other positions. I don't really understand why quarterback might be different.
Yeah, that to me, that's very curious to me as well. I don't understand that either. But the other thing I wanted to address was the super chat from D. Rulefson. How do you pronounce that? Do you see what I'm talking about, Kyle? The super chat?
What was that?
Yes. Let me.
It says, while he pulls it up, I'll read it. It says, Kirk might be a poor chess player, but has 200 wins. There you go. That's the one. Yeah. So I'm trying to think of a respectful way to answer this without ending this on a rant, because I know I'm the last caller and I don't want to end this negatively. But it's great he has 200 wins, but he needs to modernize his game. Otherwise, we're going to see the consequences of that. And by modernizing his game, it's all the things we already talked about during this show. And I am very tired of this being status quo of 9 to 10 wins every year, which I know a lot of programs would kill for that, okay? But it's been the status quo for years, and we could be such, a top team if we could just clean these things up. So just saying, oh, he has 200 wins, okay, that's fantastic. But we could be so much better. We could be a powerhouse, for crying out loud.
Right.
With the coaching quality we have at Iowa, and with the money that we could make, we could get more NIL if we were better. For sure, we'd have more supporters of NIL. So yeah. I'm sorry, this is a cop-out, this comment. I don't mean to be rude, but this is a true cop-out. Just because, of his past results, that doesn't excuse him from the results we're getting today. Not to be rude, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I think anybody that's honest at all would tell you we've been fortunate to play in the Big Ten West because the Big Ten East would be a tougher schedule of games. Of course, we play some crossover games, but 6 of those games every year was in the West versus those same 6 teams, and we did enjoy a really good winning percentage against teams in the West. And then beyond that, of course, nowadays teams play 12 regular season games, not 11. And so let's not forget that there's more opportunities to win games simply because there are more games that are played.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just feel like that's a cop out. I'm tired of this we're little old Iowa. That's all we can do is 9 or 10 games a year mentality. I am so over that.
Yeah.
I am
Right.
so over that.
There's-
Like,
I
I'm
mean, there's
sorry, that's a loser mentality.
I mean, I think every fan that pays for tickets and buys a TV package to support the team has a right to demand the best from the program. And they're definitely, there's definitely a good 25 to 40% of the fan base that is comfortable where we're at and probably will be in perpetuity. But I think the last several years, particularly since 2021, when we got to second in the nation and then fell off pretty hard a lot due to the offense. I think everybody, I think there's a good subset of the fan base now that has gotten to where you're at, Erica.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Like, I'm not saying Kirk is horrible or anything. Don't misunderstand me. That's not my opinion either. But it's just like, come on, guys. Like, I feel like we have a lot more talent on the roster right now too, even though it's not showing because our quarterback is incompetent. Like, we have good wide receivers, we have good tight ends. Our defense, even though things need to be cleaned up, is still very good. Special teams will eventually be cleaned up because LeVar knows what he's doing. So we don't need to be a blue blood. Come on, why not?
Yeah.
Can anyone answer why not? Like, that's a cop out, and that's a loser mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hope they keep bouncing back with the win at Minnesota, and after
we need to win that. We need to win that because PJ Fleck, man, I am so tired of his shtick. I am so tired. So let me ask this. Who's a bigger used car salesman? Is it Dion or is it PJ Fleck?
No, it's PJ Fleck.
PJ Fleck. What do you think, Coach?
Well, I've known PJ a long time. I knew him when he was playing at Northern Illinois, and I knew him as a young coach because we would talk at the convention every year when I saw him, and I just knew him. And of course, I was an older coach, and he had a lot of good questions for me, I thought, at the time. So it doesn't surprise me that he's had success. But I think it's safe to say PJ's got a good high opinion of PJ. That's true. And that's one thing I appreciate about Kirk. Kirk understands I need to try to make this all about the players.
Right.
Because I'm going to get enough attention anyway. And the players are the ones that have to do so much hard work. And let's just give them the spotlight. And I don't need to share that with them. I'll have enough to do as a head coach anyway. I'm going to get all the attention I could ever want regardless of that. But the point is you don't have to wrestle with the players for notoriety because you're going to get it. If you have success as a team, then clearly a lot of the credit needs to go to the head coach.
Yeah, we'll wrap up our night tonight, Erica. You can read this comment from Corey, and then I'll have to let you go.
Oh, I'm not reading that crap. Sorry.
I
just wrote in the chat a response to maybe you want to post that too.
Yeah. Well,
that's what I think of it.
That's exactly sink the boat. That's what we say.
It's
Erica,
be sunk after next week's game.
It will be. It absolutely will be. We appreciate you joining us as always, Erica.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a
Talk
good
to you
night.
later. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. That's a wrap for tonight's post-game show. Once again, Corey and Coach Don will be back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Feel free to stop by, check that out for a second look at the game for Coach Patterson and a first look for Corey Brada, who's enjoying the tail end of his wedding cake right now. Thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. Appreciate you all tagging along for a couple hours. It's been a fun night. We will see you soon.